What's up, everyone? I just wanted to make this video because I'm here in Oregon where they just decriminalize a bunch of hard drugs, among them being psilocybin, of course, LSD, cocaine, heroin, MDMA, oxycodone, methamphetamine, and methadone. They basically have legalized or decriminalized the possession of small amounts of those drugs, and they use the phrase a usable amount. And how they define a usable amount is an amount of a controlled substance that is sufficient to physically weigh independent of its packaging and that does not fall below the uncertainty of the measuring scale, or an amount of a controlled substance that has not been deemed unweighable as determined by the Department of State Police Forensic Laboratory due to the circumstances of the controlled substance. That basically means any small amount that you can use, like, I don't know, a hit or 2 or 5, I don't know, that might be too much of LSD. You know, basically not enough that might show that you're trafficking it or selling it or whatever. So, basically small amounts, that's what it means. They are creating a $57 million fund for addiction recovery centers partially funded by legal cannabis. So, $57 million this measure is putting aside for this decriminalization approach. So Measure 110 is actually reducing the penalties for larger amounts, but they're tacking on this new misdemeanor charge of called a Class E Misdemeanor violation. So let me just define what a Class E misdemeanor means. So basically, if you're caught holding any small amount, a usable amount, then you are subject to a $100 fine. And you don't have to pay that fine if you go and take one of these drug assessment classes at one of the new drug addiction centers that they're building with this measure, using some of the funds from the legal cannabis industry. So some of the taxes that are being collected from the legal cannabis industry are actually going to be used for building these new drug addiction centers. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a good use of taxes. I did read that I think they're also pulling some funds, tax revenue from schools, which I find a little questionable, but I don't want to go down to how I feel about government-funded public education because I think it's a large failure in a lot of ways, but I won't go down there today. But yeah, that's basically a Class E violation. That's what that means. So obviously, if you couldn't tell, the whole goal is to treat this as a public health concern rather than a criminal issue. They have projected targets of reducing criminal arrests and charges. So I'll just spit some numbers here that I found. The plan is to reduce criminal arrests of misdemeanor possession charges from 4,058 from 2019 to about 378. So they're projecting basically a decrease that is like massive. That's like 80% or more. 4,078 down to 378. That's the number they want to get to. From the 2019 number of 4,058. And I also have here that they are projected to save $24.5 million by taking this decriminalization approach. So I ran some numbers and I found some stats. It costs about $100 and something, basically $100 per day for an inmate to stay overnight at a prison. And the average stay of an inmate is 24 months. That's 2 years. This is for more than just drug stuff, but just to think about it. It came out to like tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars a year just to hold these people in custody. They plan to save $24.5 million. That's a substantial amount. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Portugal as well, because Portugal's mentioned a lot when it comes to decriminalizing drugs because they did it in 2001. So now it's been many years. We have some data to look at about how it's going, and it's gone pretty well. I will read off some numbers and stats here that I found on the interwebs, and it paints a pretty decent picture and gives us some pretty good expectations about how it's going to go down in Oregon. So as far as disease prevention, that was one of the goals for Portugal, to reduce diseases, namely HIV and other diseases that are transported through dirty needles. In 2014, only 40 intravenous drug users tested positive for HIV, down from 1,482 in 2000. That's pretty good. Drug use rates. As of 2012, Portugal's lifetime cocaine use per capita was about 1/10 that of Spain's and 1/5 that of France's. Lifetime drug users, defined as people who have tried any drug even once, actually rose from 8% to 12%. The between 2001 and 2007, and then declined once more to 9.5% in 2014. Problem drug users, those who have come into contact with the police or rehabilitation facilities, due to their drug habit, seem to have decreased by more than 10%. That's significant. Crime rates. Incarcerations have risen slightly from 2001 to 2012, despite the fact that fewer than half as many people are now incarcerated for drug crimes. Crime has gone up, unfortunately, but fewer than half as many people are now incarcerated for drug crimes. So obviously, like, they got a whole lot of other issues, but you know, decriminalizing the drugs likely helped. So I wanted to do this video because this just happened maybe a week ago, and I kind of want to follow it and see how it goes, and I want to provide some updates about the developments here in Oregon, especially towards the psilocybin route. I want to do a whole separate video on Measure 109, which is actually outlining how to go about the psilocybin-assisted therapies. So I'll do a whole video on Measure 109 and give the clip notes, the bullet points. I'll try to condense it down and make it easy to understand. But in general, it is basically outlining for medical patients or people seeking psilocybin-assisted therapies. This measure outlines how to go about it and do it right and legally. So appreciate you guys watching, and subscribe for more. I'm probably going to do more videos on how it's legal drugs and legal psilocybin is going down here in Oregon. So cheers.